Chapter 8, continuation of the Achdus, the unity, the oneness of God. In the previous chapter we said, God's intelligence is not like ours. Ours we have, I'm the knower. My brain is a tool of knowledge, which is separate from me of the knower. It's a part of me, but it's not a simplistic whole oneness of me. And then there's the know. Three separate things. The things that I know. That's super added to me, not a part of me. Only in a compounded way. By God, it's not that way. God is the knower, the known, the knowledge, all as one. Therefore, since it's a simplistic whole oneness, when God knows something, how does he know it? Like I just, Cindy just got back the image. Wonderful. I just knew that now. I didn't know that before. That's now something more that I know that I didn't know before. What does that mean? Marco Lozata just joined us. Something I didn't know till this moment because it came up on my screen. That's super added to what I knew before, something added now. Welcome. Point being that it's outside of me, and therefore, when I know it, I'm knowing something that's not a part of me. God, when he knows that which is a part of him, and he brings into existence by the fact that he by his awareness brings me into being. Similar to a thought that we have in our minds. We close our mind, and you're on vacation. You can't go on vacation these days. You're on vacation, and you create this whole scene in your mind, whatever it is, and it only exists. Why? Because you think it. But that's only an image. We only exist because God thinks it within him. He's aware of it and never brings into being. But it's not outside of him, it's within him. So we learned that previously. Important notion to constantly remind ourselves. The Alter Rebbe takes this notion further and says, well, that's when it comes to intelligence. And that is something, it might be a little more, I don't know if reasonable is the right word, but something we can grasp a little bit, because the awareness, we understand that it can't be outside of him, because then there would be something outside of him. But how about divine emotions? Is that a simplistic whole oneness with God? Or is it like by us? My emotions, kindness, chesed, gvura, restraint, refrain, love and awe, right? Love and fear. Those two basic emotions when do they have a reality? So this is where we can make a mistake, and we can create God in our image. So when it comes to intelligence, one of the differences between intelligence and emotions is intelligence. I don't need another being to exist in order to have intelligence, or to use intelligence, engage in intelligence. Because in intelligence, I could be in the desert and just, be a stargazer, figuring out all the celestial beings and creative forces, and I don't need to relate to anybody when it comes to intelligence. So we can understand God. Well, he doesn't need to relate to anybody in his intelligence for there to be anybody. But when it comes to emotions, how is it in me? We only have an emotion towards something. So some people are afraid of animals, so they have a fear of an animal when it comes close to them, whether it's a dog right? Some people have. I don't. And others do. Point being that someone that you care for, right? So you will have an emotion of love towards them and want to do a kindness. That's only because there's an other. So we might think then that God has an emotion towards us, love of us, for example, wanting bestowing a kindness upon us, only because there's otherness in relation to his divine emotive attribute. And why would we think that way? Very simply, because we create God in our image. Meaning, since in my intelligence, I don't need somebody else, so okay, get it. In order to engage in intelligence, right? You could sit and read books and, do things that have nothing to do with relating to another with your intelligence. But when it comes to an emotion, there has to be otherness, because the emotion is only an emotion as an emotion is in a connection to another. So there has to be otherness. So just as it is within me, the feeling of love is to another, the feeling of fear/awe is to another. So there has to be otherness. Well, that's the way it's within me. So creating God in my image, then I would think that's the way it is with God. God's emotion, again, of desiring to do in kindness, of a love, of judgment, of compassion, means there has to be another to do that towards. And therefore, on that level, in relation to God's divine emotions, there's a sense of otherness, a separateness. And by God, those emotions, therefore, are murkav, are compounded, because that's the way it is in us. What does it mean, compound? Compound means I've got different capabilities I could, and I will choose how I want to be emotionally, because I don't have to be kind. I could be gvuredik. I could be, strong and judgmental. I don't have to be judgmental. I could be pure giving, right? So what do you mean I'm choosing? Because I'm not essentially either one of them. I'm not bound up with my kindness and my restraint, power of restraint, strength, which is a power of restraint, essentially. Because if they were essential, they would have to always be expressed. But they're not. I choose this one or that one, for example, because I'm a compound of them. So the same thing as with God. That's how we kind of perceive him. Oh, today God was kind to me. I got that candy from heaven. Oh, but yesterday, no, God was, gvuredik. He was, he was more judgmental of me. And I got, something challenging and, put to the task. And that's how we perceive. And therefore, we might think God is compounded like we are in these divine emotions. That is a mistake. That's called creating God in our image. God is, even in the divine emotions, is achdus apshuta, is a simplistic whole oneness. Meaning, these attributes, just like God is essentially is, these attributes are essentially are. It's not like one moment, okay, God's like this, another moment like that. They are essential. They are totally bound up in one with him. Bound up in a simplistic whole oneness. Our kindness and our chesed and gvura and the other emotive attributes, compassion, netzach, triumph, endurance, hod, acknowledgement, humility, yesod, commitment, connection, the six divine emotions, as we have them in us also, are part of us, of course, but they're absolutely, simplistically whole, one with us. Again, it's a compound, and that's what we could choose. God, he and his divine emotive attributes are simplistic whole oneness with him. Therefore, they must be. What does that mean? It means to say that God every moment is expressing his chesed, his gvura, tiferet, netzach, hod, yesod, malchus, all 10 divine attributes actually. God is expressing kindness and judgment at the same time. How do you see that? Where do we see that? Well, in a very general sense, we see that in the fact that God is creating something out of nothing that is an expression of his divine kindness. He's doing that every moment. And at the same time, his gvura is holding back on the divine light in order that it should not obliterate us, or we should be like a ray of sun within the sun. And that's happening at every moment. Right? That's on a creative level. Let's take it on a human level, or the way we see creation, or we see life as it unfolds before us. Where do you see divine kindness at all times? Well, just in our lives. We woke up this morning, opened up our eyes, able to speak, able to breathe. Divine kindness every single moment. Where's divine judgment or restrain, holding back, divine awe? As if we see that there's a consequence to things in life. You put in the effort, you can have a consequence of that effort, right? You work hard in studying Tanya, it penetrates the head and it brings it into the heart. You're lackadaisical about learning your Tanya, right? You don't really focus. You're hearing with one ear and doing something else, right? Multitasking. So you're not really engaged. So there's a consequence with that. You don't get it because you're not focused. I'm not here to make judgment on it, but just want to bring an example as how we could see that that is happening every moment. Now, you could say that we brought that upon ourselves. That's true. But there's judgment, that the consequence of we ate something a little too whatever that we shouldn't. God creates a world. You got a stomach ache. And so on and so forth. Just to bring out an idea. So what have we here? We can create God in our own image. So let's take that a step further. Creating God in our own image is really saying, hey, I'm everything. It's all about me. It's all about my perspective and how I view things. You You're just there in the periphery, either close or far, as much as I need you and want you, because it's all about me. So much so that how I even perceive God is based on how I perceive myself. How do I perceive you then? Well, based on my needs, based on what I want from you and a need from you. That is all the idea of creating God in our own image, what will be on a human level, the result. If we let God be God, and I don't create him in my image, you know what we'll be able to also do? Let other people be who they are and not have expectations from them. For ourselves, we can have expectations, but from others, accept them for who they are. Now, that doesn't mean you that it's okay what they did. That's not, it could be something they did was wrong. Fine. I'm not talking about what they did, but who they are. Understand that they're also created in the image of God. Perhaps even have a part of God in them. And when we can accept God as God, then we can accept others for who they are and appreciate them for who they are. And ultimately even be able to learn from every individual as we learn in Pirkei Avos. That's as long as we don't create God in our image. We just need to know we're created in his image, and so all others. And if all others are, so then I can appreciate them for who they are. Boy, is that something the world needs in order to truly be healed. Any questions, any comments? Paul from San Antonio. Zella, good morning. Jackie from Montreal. Ellen from LA. Linda. Sandy. Achen David. Jane from Chicago. Rona. Oh, not fear? No, there's both. We mirror the divine. Yes, Nyla. Rena from Colorado, good morning. Pablo from Florida. Are we figments of God's imagination? No. In our estimation, we're real. And God makes us real from our perspective in order that we should come to the realization that we're a part of him. Mascuzin from the Philippines, good evening. Stephanie from Bloomington, Illinois. Hello, hi from Montreal. All right, folks. Sharing is caring. So please share the Alter Rebbe's teachings with others. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from my home in Montreal, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day.